Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back from first class, please. The gate agent's voice carried that particular blend of authority and condescension that made passengers freeze mid-stride. Aisha Williams looked up from her phone, where she'd been reviewing notes for tomorrow's Senate Armed Services Committee hearing. The bright fluorescent lights of Atlanta's Concourse D cast harsh shadows across the gate area, turning the morning rush into a theater of tired travelers and frayed nerves. "I'm sorry," Aisha said evenly, sliding her phone into the pocket of her navy blazer. "First-class boarding is for first-class passengers only," the agent continued, his name tag reading BRUCEMORRISON in bold letters. "I need to see your boarding pass again." Bruce had been working this gate for 12 years, ever since the merger that had cost him his supervisor position. Every day brought the same chaos, the same entitled passengers who thought rules didn't apply to them. He'd learned to spot trouble before it started, and this woman had that look. Too confident, too comfortable. "Look, I've seen this before," Bruce muttered to his colleague at the adjacent gate. "These people get one upgrade and suddenly think they own the place. Watch this." His colleague, Maria Santos, glanced over with concern. "Bruce, her boarding pass already scanned green. Why are you?" "Just focus on your own gate, Maria," Bruce cut her off, turning back to Aisha with renewed determination. Aisha pulled out her boarding pass for the second time in 3 minutes. The paper crinkled slightly as she handed it over. Around them, the gate area buzzed with the pre-boarding energy of Flight 447 to Los Angeles. Business travelers typed furiously on laptops. Families corralled children in carry-ons. The elderly couple in 2A had already been seated. "This says 1A, Aisha said quietly. "Right, but I need to verify this upgrade went through properly," Bruce replied, scanning the barcode again. His computer screen flickered green, valid, first class, confirmed, but something about this felt wrong to him. "We've been having system issues today." "What kind of system issues?" Aisha asked, her legal training kicking in. "The barcode scanned successfully. What additional verification is required?" Bruce hesitated. He hadn't expected follow-up questions. "Well, sometimes the system shows green even when there's an error in the back-end processing." "Has that happened today, with this flight specifically?" Well, no, but..." "Then what's the basis for your concern about my particular boarding pass?" The woman behind Aisha in line shifted her weight, checking her watch. The businessman after her cleared his throat impatiently. The energy at the gate was building toward departure time, that familiar pressure of a flight running on schedule with no room for delays. Aisha's briefcase sat at her feet, the worn leather corner speaking to years of travel between Washington and committee hearings across the country. Inside, buried beneath classified briefings and position papers, lay the final draft of the Defense Authorization Act that would reshape military procurement for the next decade. The markup session was scheduled for 9 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. Miss that, and 6 months of negotiations would collapse. The boarding pass scan beeped green again. Bruce frowned at his screen, then at Aisha, then back at his screen. The upgrade was legitimate, purchased 3 weeks ago, confirmed this morning, but something in his gut told him to push back. He'd seen too many questionable upgrades lately, too many people gaming the system. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to call this in to verify." What Bruce didn't know was that Aisha Williams held the deciding vote on the Senate subcommittee that would review his airline's merger application next month. The line behind them was growing restless. Aisha had been traveling this route monthly for 18 months, ever since her appointment to Armed Services. Before politics, she'd spent 15 years as a JAG officer, prosecuting cases that required the kind of patience that could outlast any bureaucratic maze. That patience had served her well in the Senate, where rushed decisions led to bad policy, but patience had limits. She remembered her father's advice from when she was 7, watching him navigate a hotel clerk who suddenly couldn't find their reservation. "Baby girl, some folks just need to feel important. Let them feel important, then get what you came for." He'd been right then. He'd been right through law school when professors questioned her every answer twice. He'd been right through her confirmation hearings when senators from both parties tested her resolve. But this felt different. "Sir," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard, "I've provided my valid boarding pass twice. What specifically needs verification?" Travel blogger Marcus Chen had been filming gate scenes for his YouTube channel when he noticed the commotion. At first, he'd thought it was just another upgrade dispute, the kind of minor travel drama that made for decent content. But something about the woman's composed response and the agent's increasingly aggressive stance made him switch to livestream mode. We get a lot of upgrades that don't always work out, Bruce said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. I just need to make sure everything is in order for this section. The livestream viewer count ticked upward, 12, 24, 41. The barcode scanned green, Aisha pointed out, twice. Ma'am, I understand that, but policy is policy, Bruce replied, pulling out his radio. Security to gate D17, please. For what exactly? Aisha asked. Standard procedure when we have boarding irregularities, Bruce said, though his voice wavered slightly. What irregularity? My boarding pass is valid, my seat assignment is confirmed, and I'm boarding during the appropriate time for my ticket class. The businessman behind her spoke up. Just let the lady board, the upgrade's valid. Bruce shot him a look. Sir, I'll handle this. Ma'am, if you could just step aside while I sort this out. A mother with twin toddlers pushed past them toward the family boarding area, shooting annoyed glances at the holdup. The gate area's energy was shifting from routine impatience to focused attention. Conversations quieted. Phones came out. Marcus's livestream count hit 127 viewers. Comments started flooding in. What's happening here? That boarding pass scanned green. Why is he calling security? Aisha noticed the young man with the phone, the small red recording light. She'd been filmed before, mostly in committee hearings and press conferences where she controlled the narrative. This was different. This was raw, unfiltered, and increasingly public. Her phone buzzed, a text reminder, committee markup 9 a.m. PDT, quorum at risk. 6 senators on armed services, 3 confirmed for tomorrow's session, 2 maybes. If she missed this vote, the Defense Authorization Act would die in committee. 18 months of negotiations with Pentagon brass, defense contractors, and appropriations staff would evaporate. The military's most critical funding measure would default to continuing resolution, freezing modernization programs that couldn't afford delays. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning general boarding for Flight 447 to Los Angeles, the gate agent announced over the intercom. A different agent, a woman who'd been watching Bruce's confrontation with growing concern. Maria Santos had been monitoring the situation from her adjacent gate, growing more uncomfortable by the minute. She'd worked with Bruce for 3 years and had seen this pattern before, always professional with some passengers, inexplicably thorough with others. She keyed her radio to the gate supervisor frequency. Kelly, this is Maria at D16. You might want to check on Bruce at D17. He's got a first-class passenger and it's looking like a situation. The announcement created a surge toward the gate. Aisha found herself pressed between Bruce, who was still holding her boarding pass, and the growing crowd of passengers flowing around them like water around a stone. Sir, she said again, I need to board this flight. And I need to verify this upgrade, Bruce replied, his radio crackling to life. Security, what's your ETA to D17? 3 minutes out came the response. Marcus's livestream count hit 312. The comments section was moving too fast to read, but the tone was clear. Viewers were picking sides. The consensus was building. Captain Elizabeth Torres had been pre-flighting the aircraft when her phone buzzed with a text from the gate supervisor. Potential passenger issue at gate. May need guidance. She dealt with passenger disputes before, usually over seat assignments or carry-on space. But something about the gate supervisor's tone made her walk back through the jet bridge to assess the situation herself. What she found was a well-dressed black woman standing calmly while Bruce Morrison, whom she'd flagged twice for passenger complaints, held her boarding pass like evidence in a trial. What seems to be the problem? Captain Torres asked, her voice cutting through the gate area noise with practiced authority. Captain, I'm just trying to verify this passenger's upgrade, Bruce said, relief evident in his voice. Finally, backup. Finally, someone with real authority who would understand his position. The system's been glitchy today. Has it? Torres asked, glancing at her tablet. I haven't received any notices about system problems. Well, not officially, but I've been seeing some irregularities. What kind of irregularities, Mr. Morrison? Bruce's confidence began to waver. Just upgrades that don't seem right. Captain Torres looked at the boarding pass in Bruce's hand, then at her tablet showing the passenger manifest. Seat 1A, Williams A upgrade confirmed, payment processed, no flags, no issues. Mr. Morrison, she said carefully, what specifically are you trying to verify? The manifest shows this passenger's seat assignment is confirmed. I just want to make sure everything's legitimate, Bruce replied, but uncertainty crept into his voice. He'd expected support, not questions. The barcode scan correct. Yes, but the passenger is at the gate during the appropriate boarding time for her ticket class. Yes, but I just think. Mr. Morrison, what you think isn't relevant here. What matters is policy and procedure. Aisha Williams spoke for the first time since the captain's arrival. Captain, is the Federal Aviation Regulation regarding passenger boarding still Title 14, Section 121.285? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Passengers nearby turned to listen. Marcus's livestream count hit 891 viewers. Captain Torres paused. Section 121.285 dealt with passenger manifest requirements and boarding procedures. It wasn't the kind of regulation most passengers knew by number. Hell, it wasn't the kind of regulation most flight attendants knew by number. Yes, she said slowly, it is. Then you know that once a passenger has been confirmed on the manifest and their boarding pass has been validated, any further delay constitutes a violation of that regulation unless there's a specific safety concern, Aisha continued. Is there a safety concern I should know about? The captain's radio crackled. The first officer's voice, Torres, we're looking at a 10-minute delay for departure if we don't start boarding soon. Captain, the first officer's voice came through again. Ground control is asking about our departure status. Tell them 5 more minutes, Torres replied, then turned back to the situation at hand. Bruce's face had gone pale. Security was walking up behind him, 2 officers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The livestream count hit 1,247 viewers. The comments section had exploded. Officer Martinez, one of the security guards, said, approaching the group, "What's the situation here?" "I called for assistance with a passenger issue," Bruce said quickly. "What kind of issue?" Officer Martinez asked, looking from Bruce to Aisha to Captain Torres. "The passenger's boarding pass has been validated twice," Captain Torres said before Bruce could respond. "Her seat assignment is confirmed on the manifest. Mr. Morrison called security because he wanted to verify an upgrade that's already been processed and confirmed." Officer Martinez looked at his partner, then back at the group. "So there's no security issue?" "None that I can identify," Captain Torres replied. "Mr. Morrison," Captain Torres said evenly, "return the passenger's boarding pass. Now." Aisha took her boarding pass without a word, collected her briefcase, and walked toward the jet bridge. Behind her, Bruce was explaining to security that there'd been a misunderstanding. Behind Bruce, Marcus was whispering into his phone's microphone, "Guys, I think we just witnessed something important. This is live from Atlanta, and you're not going to believe what just happened." The aircraft cabin felt different when Aisha entered. First class was nearly full, but conversations were muted. Word had traveled fast through the gate area. Passengers had seen the confrontation, seen her walk away calm and composed while Bruce Morrison faced his captain's questions. She settled into 1A, opened her briefcase, and pulled out the Defense Authorization Act draft. Tomorrow's markup session required her full attention. Committee rooms were theaters where preparation mattered more than passion, where knowing the details could shift billions in funding. Her phone buzzed with notifications, but she ignored them. Whatever was happening on social media could wait. The passenger in 1B, a technology executive named Robert Kim, had witnessed the entire gate incident. As Aisha organized her documents, he leaned over slightly. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "I saw what happened at the gate. I'm sorry you had to go through that." "Thank you," Aisha replied without looking up from her papers. "For what it's worth," Kim continued, "everyone could see that agent was out of line. You handled it with incredible grace." Aisha glanced at him briefly. "I appreciate that. Sometimes you have to trust that systems work when you know how they're supposed to work." "Are you in government?" Kim asked. "You seem to know those regulations pretty well." "Something like that," Aisha said, returning to her documents. Behind her, Marcus had boarded and was updating his followers in whispered commentary. "So I've got over 1,500 people watching now, and I'm telling you, something major just went down at the gate. The woman knew federal aviation law better than the gate agent. She's in 1A reading what looks like government documents, and I'm pretty sure we just watched someone who knows exactly what their rights are. 3 rows back, Bruce Morrison's supervisor, Kelly Wright, had been called to the gate to handle the aftermath. She'd pulled Bruce's computer logs, reviewed the passenger manifest, and was now on the phone with corporate headquarters explaining why security had been called for a confirmed first-class passenger whose only crime had been boarding with proper documentation. "Yes, sir, I understand," she was saying into her headset. "Mr. Morrison is being removed from gate duties pending review. Yes, sir, the passenger has boarded. No, sir, no further incidents." Kelly, her assistant supervisor, approached. "You need to see this. That passenger incident, someone was live streaming it. It's all over social media." Kelly pulled out her phone and watched the video with growing horror. The optics were devastating. A professional black woman calmly citing federal regulations while her gate agent called security on a validated boarding pass. "How many views?" she asked. "Over 3,000 and climbing fast. Get me corporate communications, now." What Kelly didn't know was that her call was being overheard by a passenger in the gate area who worked for the Department of Transportation. What she also didn't know was that Marcus's livestream had reached 2,400 viewers and was being shared across multiple platforms with hashtags that were beginning to trend. Captain Torres was back in the cockpit, but her mind was still on the gate encounter. She'd flown commercial aviation for 15 years, worked her way up from regional carriers to major airlines. She'd seen passenger disputes escalate unnecessarily because gate agents let personal bias override policy, but this felt different. She pulled out her phone and searched for Senator Aisha Williams' Armed Services Committee. The first result made her blood run cold. "Mike," she called to her first officer, "I need to make a quick call before we push back." First Officer Mike Chen looked up from his pre-flight checklist. "Everything okay, Captain?" "That passenger incident at the gate, I think we may have just witnessed something that's going to be much bigger than a simple boarding dispute." "What do you mean?" "I think that passenger might be Senator Aisha Williams from Armed Services. The Senator Williams who oversees airline regulation." "That's the one." The number she dialed was the airline's executive customer service line, a direct number that bypassed the usual phone tree and connected straight to senior management. The kind of number captains used when they needed immediate attention for serious problems. "This is Captain Torres, Flight 447. I need to speak to someone in senior management immediately about a passenger incident at Gate D17. While she waited on hold, she scrolled through search results. Senator Aisha Williams, Armed Services Committee, ranking member on the Subcommittee for Military Procurement, the subcommittee that would review airline industry consolidation next month. "Captain Torres," the voice that came on the line belonged to Regional VP David Park. "What's the nature of the emergency?" "Sir, we may have a significant problem. One of our gate agents just detained and called security on Senator Aisha Williams without cause. She's a sitting U.S. Senator on the Armed Services Committee." The silence on the other end of the line lasted exactly 7 seconds. "Which Senator Williams?" Park asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. "The one who chairs the subcommittee that oversees airline consolidation," Torres replied. More silence. "Is she on the aircraft?" "Yes, sir. Seated in 1A, she handled the situation with complete composure. But sir, there's a passenger live streaming this and it's already gone viral. We're looking at a major PR crisis." "Captain, I need you to personally ensure Senator Williams receives exemplary service for the remainder of her flight, whatever she needs, and get me a full report on what happened at that gate." "Understood, sir." Marcus's viewer count had hit 4,100. The comments section was a blur of outrage, support, and political commentary. Travel bloggers were reposting the stream. News outlets were reaching out to Marcus for permission to use the footage. In 1A, Aisha Williams was 3 pages deep in defense procurement regulations when her chief of staff called. "Senator, I need you to check social media," her aide said without preamble. "There's a video of you at the airport that's blowing up online." "I'm preparing for tomorrow's markup, David. Whatever it is can wait." "Ma'am, with respect, it can't. You're trending on Twitter. The video has 40,000 views in the last hour. CNN is calling." Aisha closed her briefcase. "What video?" A travel blogger live-streamed the entire gate incident. It's everywhere. Senator Williams, airline discrimination, know your rights. The airline stock is down 3% in after-hours trading. David, send me the link. I'll review it after we're airborne. Senator, the communications team thinks we should get ahead of this. Maybe a statement about. No statements, no interviews. We have work to do. Through her window, Aisha could see baggage carts loading luggage into the cargo hold. Normal airport operations continuing while something much larger played out in the digital sphere. She'd experienced viral moments before, usually around committee hearings or policy statements. But those were controlled environments where she'd shaped the message. This was different, this was authentic, this was unfiltered. David, I need you to monitor the situation but do not comment. No statements, no interviews. We have a markup session tomorrow that's more important than whatever's happening online. Ma'am, the majority leader's office called. They want to know if you need support. I need to review defense procurement policy. Everything else is noise. But even as she said it, Aisha knew the incident would follow her. Social media had a way of turning moments into movements, turning individuals into symbols. She'd seen careers launched and destroyed by viral videos. The difference was whether you controlled the narrative or let the narrative control you. In the airline's crisis management center in Dallas, a conference room was filling with executives who'd been pulled from dinner meetings and family time. The livestream was playing on multiple screens while public relations staff monitored social media metrics that climbed by the minute. How bad is this? CEO Michael Harrison asked his communications director. Sir, we're at 78,000 views and climbing. Airline discrimination is trending nationally. The optics are devastating. A sitting U.S. senator, clearly qualified passenger, detained without cause by our gate agent while other passengers watched. What's our exposure? Legal, minimal. She was ultimately allowed to board. PR, catastrophic. She's not just any senator, Mike. She chairs the subcommittee that oversees our industry, the subcommittee that votes on our pending merger application. How much is that merger worth to us? Asked Chief Financial Officer Sarah Chen. $4.2 billion, Harrison replied, and it depends on regulatory approval that Senator Williams' subcommittee can kill with a single vote. Harrison pulled up Senator Williams' committee assignments on his tablet. Armed Services, Commerce, Science, and Transportation, 2 committees with direct oversight of airline operations and consolidation. What do we know about her? Former JAG officer, legal background, known for thorough preparation and not backing down from fights she believes in. Her confirmation hearing lasted 6 hours because she wouldn't give political answers to policy questions. Recommendations. The communications director looked around the room at legal counsel, operations executives, and HR leadership. Full accountability, immediate action, complete transparency, and praise she's more interested in policy than payback. What about the gate agent, Morrison? 20-year employee, 2 previous complaints in his file that were dismissed, both involving passengers of color questioning boarding procedures. Pattern behavior, the legal counsel noted grimly. The conference room's phone rang. Harrison's assistant's voice came through the speaker. Sir, Senator Williams' office is on line 1. Every executive in the room went silent. Put them through, Harrison said. Mr. Harrison, the voice was male, professional, direct. This is David Chen, Chief of Staff for Senator Williams. The senator wanted me to convey that she has no interest in pursuing this matter personally, but she expects your company to address the systemic issues that led to tonight's incident. Of course, Harrison replied, we're conducting a full investigation and will take appropriate action. Mr. Harrison, with respect, Senator Williams knows the airline industry better than most. She knows the difference between isolated incidents and pattern behavior. She expects meaningful change, not public relations responses. The line went dead. Harrison looked around the room at his leadership team. Legal, what's our potential liability here? Civil rights violation, potentially. But more importantly, we just gave the senator who controls our industry oversight a personal example of why airline consolidation might not serve public interests. Operations, what do we know about gate agent Morrison? 12 years with the company, 2 previous passenger complaints in his file, both dismissed. One involved a Hispanic family questioning their seat assignments. Another involved a black businessman whose first-class upgrade was questioned 3 times. The pattern was clear. HR, what are our options? Immediate suspension pending investigation, mandatory retraining for all gate staff, policy review for passenger boarding procedures. Do it, all of it. Flight 447 was at 35,000 feet over Texas when Aisha Williams finally looked at her phone. The missed calls numbered in the dozens. Text messages filled her screen. Social media notifications had overwhelmed her device's capacity to display them. But the message that caught her attention was from her father. Saw the video, baby girl, you handled that exactly right, proud of you. She scrolled through the livestream comments, now approaching 150,000 views. The response was overwhelming. Stories from other travelers who'd faced similar treatment, legal analysis of aviation regulations, political commentary about power dynamics and systemic bias. But buried in the comments were the messages that mattered: Black women sharing their own travel experiences, stories of discrimination subtle and overt, moments of standing up and speaking out, moments of choosing dignity over convenience. This was bigger than one gate agent. This was bigger than one airline. This was about the thousands of daily interactions where people decided whether to challenge unfairness or accept it as the price of moving through the world. Marcus had pinned a comment explaining what happened. This woman knew federal aviation law. She stayed calm. She asked the right questions. When the captain arrived, she proved she belonged exactly where she was. This is what preparation looks like. This is what knowing your rights looks like. The video had been picked up by major news outlets. CNN was leading with Senator faces airport discrimination. MSNBC was running viral video shows systemic bias in travel. Fox News was covering Senator Williams handles airport dispute with grace. Different networks, different political angles, but the same core story: a qualified passenger treated unfairly until her credentials demanded respect. The next morning, Aisha Williams walked into the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing room at exactly 8:45 a.m. Pacific Time. Her colleagues were already reviewing the Defense Authorization Act markup, but the conversation stopped when she entered. Aisha, said Senator Martinez, the committee chairman, we saw the news. Are you all right? I'm fine, Chairman Martinez. Are we ready to proceed with markup? Actually, said Senator Bradley, ranking minority member, I think what happened to you demonstrates exactly why we need stronger oversight of airline industry consolidation. When companies get too big, customer service becomes about corporate power instead of passenger rights. Aisha took her seat, opened her briefcase, and pulled out her marked-up copy of the Defense Authorization Act. Senators, with respect, we have 18 months of negotiation to formalize today. The markup takes precedence. But she knew Bradley was right. The incident wasn't isolated. It was systemic, and it was about more than airline policy. For the next 6 hours, the committee worked through defense procurement reforms, military modernization funding, and contractor accountability measures. Aisha's preparation was meticulous, her arguments precise, her knowledge of federal regulation unshakable. At lunch break, her phone showed 847 missed calls and a text from her chief of staff, video approaching 2 million views, airline stock down 7%, CEO requesting meeting. She ignored the phone and returned to markup. The committee passed the Defense Authorization Act at 4:17 p.m. by a vote of 6-0. 18 months of preparation had become law through process, patience, and preparation, the same qualities that had gotten her through the airport incident. But as she packed her briefcase, Aisha knew the real work was just beginning. The airline industry's response had been swift. Bruce Morrison was terminated. All gate agents were required to complete civil rights training. Customer service policies were revised to emphasize de-escalation over confrontation. More importantly, the Federal Aviation Administration announced a comprehensive review of airline passenger treatment policies, with specific focus on discrimination complaints and bias training. 6 months later, Marcus Chen was boarding a flight from Los Angeles to Atlanta when he noticed the difference. Gate agents were more professional, passenger treatment was more consistent, the training had worked mostly. But the bigger change was in passengers themselves. The video had taught people their rights. Travelers were more informed, more confident, more willing to push back against unfair treatment. Marcus's travel blog had grown to 400,000 subscribers, many drawn by that original live stream. He'd become an accidental activist, documenting airline improvements and calling out problems when they persisted. The video itself had accumulated 15.2 million views across all platforms. It had become required viewing in customer service training programs across the travel industry. Business schools used it as a case study in crisis management. Law schools analyzed it for civil rights precedent. Aisha Williams continued her work on armed services, but her office received daily messages from travelers who'd faced discrimination and didn't know their rights. Her staff had created a resource guide for air traveler rights, distributed free through airports and online. She was boarding a flight to Denver reviewing veterans' health care legislation when the gate agent said, "Good evening, Senator Williams. Thank you for flying with us." Professional, respectful, and normal. "Thank you," she replied and meant it. The system hadn't been perfect that night in Atlanta, but it had been perfectible. That was the real lesson. Not that discrimination was rare, but that accountability was possible. Bruce Morrison found work with a regional airline where mandatory training had taught him what his 12 years of experience hadn't. That assumptions about who belongs where say more about the person making assumptions than about the people facing them. The viral video had changed more than airline policy. It had reminded people that dignity isn't granted by others, it's claimed by individuals who know their worth and refuse to accept less. Systems change when enough people refuse to accept the way things are and insist on the way things should be. That refusal doesn't require anger or confrontation. Sometimes it just requires knowing the regulations, staying calm under pressure, and trusting that preparation matters more than prejudice. Aisha Williams had boarded that flight in Atlanta carrying defense authorization language that would reshape military procurement. She'd landed in Los Angeles carrying something more important, proof that knowledge, patience, and quiet strength can move immovable objects. The gate agent's badge had read Bruce Morrison, but it might as well have read System. And the system, when challenged by someone who understood how it worked, had bent toward justice. 6 months later, travelers moved through airports with slightly more confidence, gate agents processed passengers with slightly more care, and the country had slightly less tolerance for discrimination disguised as policy. Change doesn't happen all at once. It happens one boarding pass at a time, one video at a time, one person at a time who refuses to accept that this is simply how things are. If this story touched you, I hope you'll subscribe to see more accounts of ordinary people doing extraordinary things by simply standing up for what's right. Share this with someone who needs to remember that their voice matters. Every story like this one matters because dignity isn't negotiable and justice isn't an accident. Sometimes the most radical act is knowing exactly where you belong.